Here is a quick and dirty of what I did to degree my cams in my ZX10. Not liable if you screw anything up, so there's not too many videos on degreeing motorcycle cams that I could find on YouTube, so I thought I would make something quick since I was kind of having troubles myself. You need a degree wheel, obviously. I've just got a comp cams one. I spaced it out with some washers, nuts, and a bolt I had from a DSM. And then the trick I learned from my head guy tonight, actually talking on the phone with him, is you want to get a washer that fits perfectly in the round part where the bolt goes through. I was having a heck of a time trying to get the thing to balance without being, cocked one way or the other. So having that washer to center it within that hole of the comp cam. I can include a link if you want to the wheel, and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about, that big hole in the middle there. But you want to make sure you get that nice and snugged up. Then what you want to do is I just use a coat hanger, attached it to whatever you can in the engine. If you want to use a head bolt, if you want to use whatever bolts you can do, you just want to make sure that that is nice and solid. Then the other thing, if you can see, I tried to grind a tip on the end of the wire there, so you can try and be a little bit more accurate with your measurements. So then once you get that all set up, you'll kind of get you get the degree wheel snug but not tight. Then you'll need a top dead center tool. This is an APE one I bought. It works quite slick. What you do is you just thread it into the spark plug hole. I'm almost at top dead center, so I'll turn the motor over a little bit so the cylinder's on the bottom. There we go. And then AP also recommends that you use anti-seize on the thread so you don't gum up your head or nothing like that. So real simple. Screw it in till it stops. It's got a nice solid stop on it. The one thing you can try and do before you do that is there's usually some sort of timing mark on the timing rotor. You can try and line up top dead center with the wire so you can get at least kind of close. Then what you'll do is you'll spin the motor over until it hits the piston stop. So here it goes. And then you'll want to keep pressure on the wrench back here so you can, otherwise your timing wheel can move a little bit. Sorry about the heater in the garage. It's cold up in the frozen tundra. So there we go. We got 40, and then we'll turn the wrench around, spin the motor back over the other way. And what you're looking for is to get the same number on each side when you spin it. So before we had 40, we spin it over here, and we got 40 right there. So you'll want the same number on each side. That means the degree wheel is centered the piston stop. So then say you were off, say one side was 50 and one side was 30, you'll just add up the two divided by 2, and then you'll get where you kind of want it. So say if when you spun it over the first time you hit 50, you spun it over the other way, you hit 30, you just add those two up and divide it by 2. So you would spin the wheel over until your mark lined up on the 40, and then you'd kind of snug up the bolts, so the wheel doesn't move. Try it again, and then just make sure each time you land perfectly on either side of it. So that's how you set up your degree wheel. Then you can pull out your piston stop. You can make your own. There's lots of ways. You know, you can epoxy a bolt in a socket, what have you. The APE piece is pretty trick though. You know, it's $30 or something like that. I bought it on eBay when they had the 30% off to try and get a deal, of course, because I'm a cheap bastard. So once you get your gear wheel set up, you'll want to set up a dial indicator. I just got a cheap Harbor Freight one. When I did it the first time, I had this guy from Harbor Freight. Honestly, it worked, but it was a pain because to try and get the little snake part to not move each time you try to adjust it was just a pain. And then that comes with the regular old dial indicator, which works no problem. But sometimes if you're doing it for a while, like it took me quite a while to degree my cams, not even gonna lie. Sometimes you get tired at the end of the night and you can't remember where it started or where it stopped. So I picked up the cheap magnetic base from Harbor Freight, and I picked up the little Harbor Freight digital gauge, so you can just zero it out. So like on the intake cam here, let's push it down. If you can see the lobes pushing down on it. There goes the lobe of the cam. And then what you'll want to do is to set this, which is slick, over the regular one works. This one's really easy. All you do is you go in and you hit 0. Zeroes out the gauge. You want to make sure you get it nice and steady. And then what I do is I've been spinning the motor over by hand, so that each time that the motor spins around, when it comes back to 0, so you know there's no wobble, no play in your dial indicator, like so. And then the other trick you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that the dial indicator moves along with the bucket. Otherwise you couldn't get your reading couldn't be quite accurate. What you can do with the ZX10 is kind of what I did. The race manual shows you, if you can see that at all. The race manual shows, I'm sure you can get it for whatever bike you're looking for, the stock lift of the cams. So for example, this is 10.3, and then if you go and you figure out what your shim size was, so for me it was the 0.20 for this this valve. It would take your 10.0 or your 10.3 lift minus your valve shim there, or the gap you had between the valve and the cam. So 0.2, you would get the 10.1. So then when you're spinning it over, you can switch this one to millimeters, or you can just do the math on Google or whatever. But you want to make sure when you spin that over that you're either dead on or within 5 thousandths of the cam lift. So that's another good checker. So when you spin this over, I would get 10.1 millimeters lift on the cam. That way I know my dial indicator is nice and plumb and straight, and it's getting an accurate reading. So once you do that, you get all that set up going good. Then what you want to do is you'll spin the motor over to 40 thousandths. Sorry for the crappy video, I just got a cell phone. So you can kind of watch the cam as it's turning and it starts pushing on the bucket. And you can come over here and watch the gauge. It moves a little bit. I've got the base just mounted on a Milwaukee grinder tool to change grinder wheels, magnetic, and what I had around the garage. It flexes a tiny bit when you're really cranking on it, but when you're spinning it over nice and slow, it doesn't move it. So here we go. We got 0.1. You go to 0.040. It can be hard to get it to stop right at 040. There you go. And you'll want to try and keep a little bit of tension on the wrench. Keep that 040. And you'll come down here, see what it reads, and then you'll keep spinning it over. Again, this one's nice since you zeroed it out. You can just kind of watch it as it maxes out and then starts coming back down. So then you would come back till you hit the 0.040 again. You'd come, you'd get your measurements. And what I did, because I work in spreadsheets all day, I made a little formula for me to figure it out. So on the intake there, I had, I came up with 15 degrees on my timing wheel. The one time I estimated it at 55.75. The other time I said it was 56. I just made a little formula for an average. I was shooting for 110, 111. My average came out to 110.4. I'm going to call that good enough. And kind of here too, I did write down that normally on the intake, you'll get your certain lift at your before top dead center, and you'll get your second reading usually after bottom dead center. And as far as the exhaust here, those are normally going to be, the first one's going to be before bottom dead center, and then the exhaust is going to be after top dead center. And then once you degree it, most of the time they recommend that you'll check the clearances for the piston and the valve. The first time I did my head work, I didn't check it. My head guy told me I'd be fine. This time I just wanted to be safe, so I bought this little competition CNC piston to valve tool. It's pretty slick. It comes with this little brass rod you can use to thread on there. I was having a heck of a time getting it to work, just with the clearance issues. So I ended up just using the Allen wrench that they include. So what you'll want to do, so for on the exhaust side, the race manual says to check it for at 10 degrees after top dead center. I was going to go through and check all of them. But as I kept checking my cams at each different degree, top 10 degrees top dead center, or whatever the manual recommended, so 10 degrees after top dead center on the intake, and then 10 degrees before top dead center on the exhaust is where I found the tight spots. So that's what I kind of just stick with and just did all those. So then how this tool works is you'll spin the motor over till you reach 10 degrees after top dead center. Here it goes. There's top dead center's coming up. There's and when you look at it, you don't want to look at it from an angle because you're gonna skew your readings on either side. You want to try and get it close to straight on as you can. So here we go. Spin it a little more until we hit 10 degrees. You'll come up here to your CNC, competition CNC tool. I have enough clearance to kind of stick the Allen wrench in there. And then it's pretty slick. It mounts a hole where you'd mount the valve cover. And then there's the rod, and then you can either bolt the brass rod pin that they include. I ground mine down. It still didn't work great, so I've just been using the Allen wrench. So you'll come over here. You'll either zero out your electronic gauge or take note of where the other one was. Then you just push down on the tool once you make sure it's on the bucket. And you can see right there I got 0.045 before my valve touched my piston. And according to the race specs, 0.028 was what you wanted for a minimum. So I am well within that for the intake at 110. So there they show 0.7 millimeters and 1.2 millimeters for the exhaust. And when you do the math, that comes out to 0.028 and then 0.047 for the exhaust. So it's not too hard. It's a little scary when you first do it, if you haven't done it before. I know I've had DSMs, I've taken motors in and out, done cams, whatnot, but for some reason motorcycle cams and degreeing them kind of scared the hell out of me. It's really not too bad. And then once you get these in, the thing that I didn't understand at first either is you'll just loosen up one of your cam gear bolts, get it loose, spin the motor over till you'll get where you want, and then you can loose the other one and then kind of nudge the motor over till you get where you want. Tighten the one up, spin the motor over. I tightened up the other bolt, checked it, did the same thing, spun it over till you hit the 40 thousandths, and then you would check it, repeat, and keep going. If anybody wants it, I did have this little spreadsheet, so it'll do the math for you. If you're curious, I'll include a link to, I think webcams is where I found a good tutorial. There was a good tutorial on the ZX10 forums, but I think a lot of the pictures broke on that thread. So webcam has some good info. If you search around, there is a little bit of info about degreeing cams, but nothing really motorcycle specific. So I can send you this spreadsheet if anybody would like it. And I also, again, because I work in spreadsheets all day and I'm kind of a nerd, I also made a little spreadsheet for the valve shims as well. If you're checking your valves, you put in your old gap, what you measured, your old shim, and then you would it would find the differences for the min and max allowance. It would estimate what your new shim should be for the min and the max. And you just pick what you want, and it'll, kind of figure out what the new gap will be. I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool. The first time I did a valve job, I, trying to think of the math and do them all in different ones, and I had a heck of a time, so I made this stupid little thing. It made it go really quick for me. So if anybody wants this, leave a comment. I can shoot you an email with it if you include your email or whatnot. So yeah, there it is. Overall, not a terrible process. Very time consuming when you first do it because you don't want to screw anything up. And then another thing on the ZX10s you kind of want to do, you'll get in the exhaust cam first when you're, if you take the cam out, if you're doing headwork or whatever, you'll want to get this on there first. And what I did was I zip tied the chain to the cam gear once you kind of get the lines up. And then the other trick I was told, when you take the cams out, there's not going to be any marks anymore to line up on the cam gears since you moved them from the circle holes to the elongated holes. So what I ended up doing was, if you can see it, I gotta have a light over here somewhere. What you can do is I took a little screwdriver and kind of scribed a line in the cam gear cap there, so that way when I was putting the cams in, I could line up the lobes with that line, and you can kind of, get it close enough that you're not gonna make some pistons kiss any valves when you're putting it together. You can also throw, if you can see, I scribed a little line on the end of the cams too, just to help me line it up. Otherwise, you're not really gonna know how to put the cams back in if you don't give yourself some sort of cheat on how to get it back in. You just want to make sure when you take it apart, put it back together, make sure you follow the tightening and loosening bolt sequence. But other than that, take some time, but that's something that anybody that can turn a wrench can honestly do. So hopefully you found this helpful. Sorry it's so long, but there we go.